Welcome to Greek for a Week. I'm glad that you are continuing the study with us here in chapter 4 of First Peter. We're looking at the second portion of the paragraph, 7 through 11. If you recall, I mentioned that verses 1 through 11 would serve as the paragraph that primarily talks about the conduct that we have toward others. I labeled this one part 2. Technically, what we could say is chapter 4, verses 1 through 6 would be our conduct toward unbelievers. This part 2, would be our conduct toward believers. And so I just labeled it kind of in a broad stroke, conduct toward others. But I wanted to make sure I made that delineation so that you understood the two parts to the entire paragraph of 1 through 11. So I'm just looking at one verse today, verse 7, that'll kind of set the stage for 8 through 11. I think this will be helpful. He says, "Now the end of all things is near. Therefore, be of sound mind and well balanced for the purpose of prayer." So again, what I think he's doing is, here is our de. So that is continuing the argument, yet it's a new development in the argument. It's building on what precedes in verses 1 through 6. So he's continuing that progress, again, using the de. Now, the ta telos here, that would be our nominative subject of the verb, it is near. And we have two commands. So those two commands are joined by kai here, and there's our kai. Now, those two commands, they're both second person plural because of the sate. There's our second person plural. Aorist active imperatives. And I think what these two imperatives do, which I agree with Dubis, who is the author for the Baylor Press Handbook. I think what's happening here is this is a demonstration of clear-headedness in contrast to the drunkenness and the carousing parties and that negative character that's described in verse 3. So I think he's saying here, as believers, we ought to be of sober mind and well balanced, in contrast to then verse 3 above. And the un here, this un is an inferential un. It's introducing here, as in also the following verses to come in 8 through 11, those exhortations. And as it introduces those exhortations, you could say it's motivationally grounded, again, in the nearness of the end, which, again, that was Dubis's comment. So this un serves really as a way forward into verses 8 through 11, but also then presently these two commands that, since we have a situation that's near, in other words, the end is near, therefore act in this way. And then, of course, we have the use of the ace here, which I would contend here is a purpose or a goal. In other words, Peter wants him to act in this way for the goal of, or for the purpose of, prayer. Trust that's been helpful. That was verse 7. We're going to move forward and we're going to look at verses 8 and 9 next week. And then the following week, we'll look at verses 10 and 11. Have a great week.